The morning sun had just risen above the skyline of Port Harcourt, painting warm golden lines across the busy streets. Cars honked, Okada riders zigzagged through traffic, and traders hurriedly arranged their wares before the lunch rush began. In the middle of this noise and movement stood a tiny roadside food stall with a bright blue shed roof and the sweet smell of fried onions drifting through the air. This was Sarah's stall, a place known by mechanics, taxi drivers, market women, and construction workers who passed through the area every day. For years, Sarah had made a simple but honest living cooking steaming plates of rice, stew, and fried plantain. Her arms were strong, her smile warm, and her voice calm. People loved her food, but even more, they loved her heart. Every day, at almost the exact same time, Sarah would notice a small figure across the road, an elderly woman in faded clothes, sitting on a broken wooden stool, clutching an old plastic plate. Her hair was grey, her eyes were soft but tired, and her voice was barely above a whisper when she begged for food. Her name was Abigail. "Please, my daughter, do you have anything I can eat today?" Abigail would ask, lifting her plate slightly. And every single day, without hesitation, Sarah would stop what she was doing, scoop a generous portion of rice and stew, and hand it to the old woman. "There you go, Mama Abigail," Sarah would say gently. "Eat and regain your strength." Abigail's face always changed from exhaustion to gratitude. She would smile, sometimes even laugh softly. "God bless you, Sarah," she would whisper. "You feed me like your own mother." Sarah would only smile. "You deserve to eat too, Mama. Nobody should go hungry." This became their daily ritual, no matter how busy the stall was, no matter how little Sarah had left to sell, no matter how tired she felt. Abigail always had a plate. Sometimes customers would complain. "Madam Sarah, you give too much to that old woman," one man grumbled one afternoon. "She cannot pay you. Why do you waste food every day?" Sarah would simply reply, "If she cannot pay me, God will. Kindness is never waste." And she meant it. But deep down, Sarah also knew that feeding Abigail daily came at a cost. There were days when profit was low, days when rain scared customers away, days when she barely made enough to buy ingredients for the next morning. Still, she could not turn Abigail away. One slow afternoon, as Sarah washed her pots behind the stall, Abigail approached her, holding her plate close to her chest. "Sarah," she whispered, I have nothing today, not even water. Could I please—" Sarah quickly filled the plate, her heart heavy with concern. She wished she could do more, give the old woman a home, a warm bath, a real place to rest. But Sarah herself lived in a small one-room apartment and barely earned enough to support her younger sister's school fees. Even so, when she handed Abigail the food, the old woman cried softly. "Every day I pray for you," she said. "I tell God that if he has only one blessing to give today, he should send it to Sarah, the food seller." Sarah swallowed the lump in her throat. "Thank you, Mama Abigail," she whispered. "Your prayers are enough for me." But she never imagined how powerful those prayers were. Another week passed, filled with the usual hustle and bustle. On a bright Wednesday morning, Sarah woke early, went to the market, and bought fresh tomatoes, onions, pepper, rice, and vegetables. She returned to her stall and began cooking. By the time customers began lining up, she was already stirring her pot of stew with practiced ease. Around noon, Abigail arrived. She had walked slowly that day, leaning on a wooden stick, her steps weaker than usual. Sarah noticed immediately. "Mama Abigail, come and sit," she said softly, guiding her to a chair. "You look tired." "It is just age, my daughter," Abigail said with a faint smile. "Age is catching me." Sarah served her a warm plate of food and tucked a small bottle of water beside it. Abigail clutched Sarah's hand. One day God will remember you," she said with conviction. "I do not know how, but he will." Sarah laughed quietly. "Amen, Mama. Amen." She didn't know that the old woman's words were about to come true in a way she could never imagine. Just as Sarah turned back to the pot of rice, a loud rumbling filled the street. "Vroom! Vroom! Vroom!" Everyone turned. 3 massive trucks, a convoy, slowly rolled down the road toward Sarah's stall. They were filled, not with sand, not with building materials, but with bags of rice. Lots of them. The entire street froze. Sarah wiped her hands and stepped forward, confused. The truck stopped directly in front of her stall. The doors opened and a group of men jumped out, led by a tall, friendly-looking businessman named Christopher. He walked straight to her, smiling. "Are you Sarah, the food seller?" he asked. "Yes, I am," she said cautiously. He stretched out his hand. "Good, we've brought you a donation." Sarah blinked. "A donation? For her?" "We heard how you feed the beggar woman every day," Christopher continued. "Your kindness inspired many of us." Behind him, men began unloading bag after bag after bag of premium rice. Sarah's lips parted in shock. Abigail watched from her seat, tears forming. Something unbelievable had begun. For a long moment, Sarah could not move. She stood frozen, the wooden spoon still in her hand, her apron stained with stew, her heart pounding wildly. The street buzzed with confusion as people gathered around the trucks, whispering and trying to understand what was happening. Christopher stepped forward, still smiling warmly. "Sarah," he said again, "these bags of rice are for you." For me?" she whispered. Her voice trembled. "Yes," he replied, "your kindness deserves to be supported." The workers began unloading the trucks with surprising speed. One by one, they carried heavy 50-kilogram bags and stacked them neatly beside her stall. The pile grew higher and higher, creating a small mountain of rice that made passers-by stop in amazement. "Mama Sarah," a young Okada rider shouted, "are you opening a warehouse?" Someone else shouted, "This one Don Blow, she is now a big supplier." But Sarah barely heard them. Her eyes were wide and wet. She still could not understand why such a miracle had happened to her. Christopher noticed her shock and gently placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We didn't come here by accident," he said quietly. "Your name was mentioned many times in a meeting we had this week." Sarah looked up in surprise. "Mentioned? By who?" Christopher chuckled. "By people who see your kindness every day. The mechanic who eats here daily. The fruit seller across the road. Even the small children you sometimes give leftover fried plantain to. Everyone talks about how you feed the old woman, Abigail, without expecting anything in return." Sarah felt her throat tighten. "But I didn't do it to be seen," she whispered. "I only did what any human being should do." Christopher nodded. "Exactly. That is why you deserve this." Abigail, still sitting with her plate on her lap, blinked rapidly as tears filled her eyes. Slowly she stood up, supporting herself with her stick, and walked towards Sarah. Her steps were shaky, but her voice was firm. "Sarah," she whispered, I told you God would remember you." The old woman's tears fell freely as she reached for Sarah's hand. "You fed me when I had nothing," Abigail said. "You fed me when others pretended not to see me. You fed me when I was invisible." Sarah shook her head, overwhelmed. "Mama Abigail, please, don't cry." "I must cry," Abigail replied softly, "because from today you will never lack again." Christopher watched the two women with respect. He stepped aside slightly to allow them their moment. Meanwhile, his workers continued unloading the rice. There were far more bags than Sarah had first thought, enough to fill the back of her stall, the sides, and 2 entire storage rooms if she had them. The crowd grew thicker, people began clapping, some smiling as if they too were part of the miracle. "What a blessing," one market woman said, raising her hands in admiration. "Good people still exist," a taxi driver added. Children ran up and down with excitement as the massive bags kept rolling out of the trucks. When the unloading was finished, Christopher turned to Sarah again. "This rice will last your business months, even years, if you use it well," he said. "But that is not all." Sarah blinked in confusion. "Not all." Christopher nodded. "We are also supporting you with a 1-year supply of tomatoes, onions, groundnut oil, and seasonings. You will receive them in batches." Sarah gasped. A wave of dizziness hit her. "Sir, I don't understand. Why me? There are many food sellers in this city." Christopher took a deep breath before speaking. "Kindness is not common," he said softly. "People think they must be rich before they can help others. But you, Sarah, you helped someone every day, even on days you barely had enough for yourself." He looked at Abigail and then back at Sarah. "Somebody who gives from a small pot has a bigger heart than someone who gives from a warehouse," he continued. "Your story inspired us, and we want others to learn from your example." Tears rolled down Sarah's cheeks. She covered her face with her hands, overwhelmed. Abigail wrapped an arm around her and whispered, "My daughter, you deserve every grain." The drivers and workers stood quietly, touched by the emotional scene. Even some of the men wiped their eyes discreetly. Finally, Sarah gathered herself and faced Christopher properly. "Sir," she said, her voice shaking, "thank you. I have nothing to give you in return." Christopher shook his head. "Your kindness was your gift. We are simply giving ours in return." Suddenly, a reporter holding a camera approached. "Excuse me, sir," he asked Christopher. "May we take photos? This story can inspire the city." Christopher glanced at Sarah for permission. Sarah hesitated, then nodded softly. If her story spread, maybe more people would help others too. The camera clicked, capturing Sarah standing beside the mountain of rice, with Abigail by her side, holding her plate close to her chest. Christopher leaned towards Sarah again. "My team and I will return tomorrow," he said. "We want to talk to you about the next step for your business." Sarah blinked. "Next step?" "You will soon understand," he replied with a smile. And with that, he and his men climbed back into their vehicles and began to leave. The crowd slowly dispersed, whispering with excitement. But Sarah and Abigail stood together, staring at the enormous gift in front of them. For the first time in a long time, Sarah felt something powerful rising inside her. The news traveled faster than Sarah ever imagined. By the next morning, people from all corners of the community were talking about the woman whose kindness brought 3 trucks of rice to her tiny roadside stall. Some had seen the photos online, others had heard from friends or neighbors, and many simply came to witness the miracle with their own eyes. When Sarah arrived at her stall at dawn, the mountain of rice bags still stood proudly beside her shed. She paused for a moment, touched one of the bags gently, and whispered, "Thank you, Lord. I don't even know where to begin." She opened her small shop, lit her kerosene stove, and began cooking just like every other morning. The smell of frying onions and fresh tomatoes filled the air, drawing people closer. A few minutes later, Abigail arrived slowly, leaning on her stick. She had a bright scarf tied around her shoulders and a look of joy Sarah had never seen on her before. "You came early today, Mama," Sarah smiled. "My daughter, how can I sleep after yesterday?" Abigail said. "I must see your miracle again." Sarah laughed softly and guided Abigail to her usual seat. "Come and sit. You know your plate is always ready." As Sarah scooped rice into a plastic plate, a group of school children approached. They carried small coins in their hands. "Good morning, Auntie Sarah," they chorused. "Good morning," Sarah replied warmly. "Are you all going to school?" "Yes," a boy replied proudly. "We came to buy food, but also to see the rice trucks." Another girl added shyly, "My mummy said we should be kind like you." Sarah paused. The words warmed her heart more than sunlight ever could. "Thank you," she said. "Come, all of you. Let me give you extra stew today." The children's faces lit up as she served their food. Before long, taxis began stopping at her stall. Mechanics from the nearby workshop came with wide smiles. Market women passed by to congratulate her. One even brought gifts, a basket of fresh peppers and tomatoes. Sarah tried to refuse, but the woman insisted, "Take it, my sister. Your heart deserves it." Throughout the morning, more and more people came, not just for food, but to simply greet Sarah or shake her hand. Some said her story gave them hope. Others said she reminded them that kindness still existed in a world full of hardship. Sarah received every visitor humbly, though she felt shy with all the attention. But the most emotional moment came when 2 women approached her stall holding hands. One of them stepped forward and said, "Sarah, because of you, we remembered our mother." Sarah looked at her curiously. She continued, "Our mother died last year. She used to sit on the roadside begging. Some days she would come home hungry because people ignored her. Seeing how you treat Abigail, it reminded us that someone like our mother needed someone like you." The woman wiped a tear. "Thank you for showing love to someone many would walk past." Sarah felt a lump in her throat. She didn't know what to say, so she simply hugged the woman tightly. Around noon, a familiar polished car pulled up. It was Christopher's SUV. He stepped out wearing a simple shirt and trousers, looking nothing like the proud businessman people saw at events. Behind him, 2 other men emerged, one carrying documents, the other holding a laptop bag. When Sarah saw him, she stood up quickly. "Good afternoon, sir." "Sarah," he greeted with a warm smile. "I hope your morning has been peaceful." She laughed. "Peaceful? Sir, the whole community has visited me today. I do not think I have ever spoken this much in one morning." Christopher chuckled. "Good. It means your story is touching people." He glanced at Abigail, who was sitting with her plate. "Mama Abigail, how are you today?" he asked. The old woman stood slightly and bowed her head. "I am happy today, sir. I am happy like a newborn child." Christopher nodded, then turned to Sarah. "We came for our meeting," he said. "May we sit?" Sarah brought out 2 plastic chairs from inside her stall and placed them under the shade. She felt her stomach twist with nervous excitement. Christopher sat, opened the folder he brought, and began. "Sarah," he said calmly, "yesterday was only the beginning. We believe your stall can become something bigger, more structured, more powerful, and able to help more people." Sarah blinked. "Bigger? How do you mean?" Christopher laid a paper in front of her. "This is a proposal to expand your roadside stall into a proper mini-restaurant," he said. "With your permission, we want to help you build a bigger space, still simple, but large enough to serve more customers comfortably." Sarah stared at the paper, then back at him. She thought she had misheard. "A restaurant?" she whispered. "Yes," he said. "Your stall already has the heart of a restaurant. It only needs the wings." Another paper went down. "This," Christopher continued, "is an offer to train you on basic business management. You will learn how to keep records, calculate profit, manage staff, and buy supplies at the best prices." Sarah felt the world spinning. "Sir, this is too much. I don't know business like that." "That is why we will teach you," Christopher said gently. The third document went down. "And this," he added, "is an agreement to employ 2 assistants, paid by us for the first 6 months, so you can focus on improving your cooking and growing the restaurant." Sarah covered her mouth with her hands. Tears pooled in her eyes. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say yes," Christopher replied softly. "Say yes to the future God is opening." Abigail stood up suddenly, leaning on her stick. "Sarah," she said loudly, "do not fear blessing. Blessing is not a burden. Accept it." Sarah looked at Christopher again, overwhelmed. "Sir," she said with a trembling voice, "I say yes." Christopher smiled widely. "Good, then your new journey begins today." The workers beside him clapped. Abigail lifted her hands and whispered a prayer. And Sarah felt something warm rise in her chest. Hope mixed with purpose. It was only the beginning. Construction began only a week after Sarah agreed to the proposal. The once quiet corner where her small stall stood soon transformed into a lively work zone, buzzing with activity. Builders carried wood, electricians installed wiring, painters mixed colors, and curious neighbors gathered every day to watch the miracle unfold. Sarah stood beside Abigail one bright morning, hands clasped tightly as she watched workers lift beams into place. "I cannot believe this is happening," she whispered. Abigail nodded slowly. "When God remembers someone, he does not whisper, he shouts." Sarah laughed softly, wiping her eyes. "Mama Abigail, if you make me cry again this morning, I will not give you extra plantain." Abigail gasped dramatically. "Then I must behave myself," she said, making Sarah burst into full laughter. Soon, a small but beautiful restaurant took shape, painted yellow and white with a bold signboard that read, "Sarah's Kitchen, a place for everyone." Christopher's team installed a double stove, a stainless steel counter, new pots, shelves, and 2 standing fridges. They even added a hand-washing station and 10 plastic tables under a wide canopy outside. Sarah walked through the new space, touching the smooth counters, the shiny pots, and the clean tiled floor. She felt like she was inside a dream. "Sir," she said to Christopher, who stood watching proudly, "I do not know how to thank you." "You already have," he replied. "Every day you fed Abigail, you planted a seed. This is simply the harvest." Her hired assistants, Joy and Daniel, both young people looking for opportunities, joined her soon after. They greeted her with bright smiles. "Good morning, Madam Sarah," they chorused. Sarah raised both hands quickly. "Please, please call me Sarah." "I am not a madam," Joy giggled. "No problem." Sarah. Construction finished just in time for the restaurant's opening day. By 7 a.m., a small crowd had gathered outside. Some people had come to show support, others came out of curiosity, and many came because they had seen the viral photos online. A local journalist even approached Sarah. "We want to write a story about your journey," she said. "Your kindness is inspiring many." Sarah smiled shyly. "Please write more about kindness than about me." When Christopher arrived with his team, he looked around and nodded in satisfaction. "Everything is ready." He stepped aside and gestured for Sarah to cut the ribbon tied across the new entrance. Her hands shook. "I've never cut a ribbon before." "Then today is your first," Christopher said. The community counted down aloud. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Sarah cut the ribbon and the crowd clapped joyfully. Her heart swelled so much she could hardly breathe. The first day of business was overwhelming in the best possible way. Customers came in waves: mechanics, motorbike riders, office workers, market women, and schoolchildren. Joy quickly arranged plates, Daniel cleaned tables, and Sarah stood behind her new counter, serving rice and stew with steady hands and a wide, grateful smile. "Sarah, this tastes even better now," a regular customer shouted happily. "It is the same food," she laughed. "No," he said. "I think your joy added more flavor." One old man ate his plate quietly and then approached her slowly. "My daughter," he said, "I have eaten at many places, but your heart seasoned this food." Sarah felt her chest warm. "Thank you, sir." By noon, she had sold more plates than she normally sold in 2 days. Joy tapped her shoulder excitedly. "Sarah, we need more rice." Sarah opened one of the 30-kilogram bags stacked safely inside the new storeroom and smiled at how many bags were still untouched. "Today will be a good day," she said softly. While the restaurant buzzed with customers, Abigail sat at her special reserved corner, a small chair with a purple cushion. Sarah insisted she should never have to stand in line. When Sarah approached her with a plate of rice and stew, Abigail touched her hand. "My daughter, look at you," she whispered, "serving the world, and the world is watching." Sarah swallowed the lump in her throat. "Mama Abigail, you are the beginning of this story. Without you, I would never have learned kindness so deeply." Abigail blinked rapidly. "If I am the beginning, then you are the miracle." Later that afternoon, when the rush finally calmed, Christopher invited Sarah to sit for a short meeting. "Sarah," he began, "how do you think today went?" Sarah exhaled deeply. "Sir, I do not know how to describe it, but I feel like my heart is singing." Christopher smiled. "Then listen to it, and prepare for more." He brought out a folder. "We want to help you register Sarah's Kitchen officially as a business. You will get a proper license, a business account, and weekly supply deals with local markets. This will protect you and help you grow." Sarah stared at him, stunned. "Sir, you have already done too much." "We haven't," Christopher said. "Helping you is an investment in the community. And there is still more to come." Sarah pressed a trembling hand on her chest. "I hope I am strong enough for all of this." "You are," Christopher replied confidently. "You have been strong long before today." A soft voice interrupted them. "Sarah." It was Abigail standing with her stick. "There is something I need to tell you," she said quietly. "Something important." Sarah frowned with concern. "Mama, are you all right?" Abigail nodded slowly, but her expression was serious. "It is time," she said in a low voice, "for you to know the truth about who I really am." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. Christopher looked up sharply. The room grew silent. Abigail took a deep breath, lifted her eyes, and whispered, "There is something I have kept from you. Something I never thought I would reveal. But after what God has done for you, you deserve to know." Sarah's hands slowly tightened on the table. "What truth?" she asked softly. Abigail stepped forward, her voice shaking, her eyes full of history, and the story was about to shift in a way Sarah never expected. The restaurant fell quiet as Abigail's words hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Even Joy and Daniel paused their work, sensing the tension. Sarah slowly pulled out a chair for Abigail, her heart beating fast. "Mama, what truth? What is happening?" Sarah asked, her voice soft but unsteady. Abigail sat down slowly, holding her stick with trembling hands. For the first time since Sarah had known her, she looked afraid. Christopher stepped closer. "Mama Abigail, if you are uncomfortable, we can—" "No," Abigail interrupted gently. "It is time." She turned to Sarah, her eyes full of memories far older than the wrinkles on her face. "You see me as a beggar," she began, "an old woman with nothing. But many years ago, Sarah, I was not always this way." Sarah leaned closer, confusion growing. I was once a trader, Abigail continued, not a small one. I had a big rice business, a warehouse, and 12 workers. People called me Mama Overflow because my shop always overflowed with grains. Sarah's eyes widened. You were a businesswoman? Abigail nodded slowly. I was, until life changed. She took a shaky breath. One night, thieves broke into my warehouse. They took everything. I tried to rebuild, but sickness struck me soon after. My children, all 3 of them, the city swallowed them. They scattered and never came back. I lost everything I owned, my shop, my money, my family. Sarah felt tears welling in her eyes. Mama Abigail. So I learned to beg, the old woman continued, not because I wanted to, but because I had no choice. I begged for many years, and most people saw me as a nuisance, a stain on the roadside. They gave me scraps, insults, or nothing at all. She closed her eyes. But then, you came. Sarah covered her mouth, her own breath trembling. You never asked who I was, Abigail whispered. You never asked if I could pay. You never asked why I was begging. You just fed me, every day, with the same dignity you gave your paying customers. Abigail wiped her tears with the back of her hand. And because of you, I started believing I was human again. Sarah couldn't hold back anymore. She knelt beside Abigail, resting her head gently on the old woman's lap. Oh, Mama, I never knew, she whispered. You were not meant to know, Abigail said softly, resting her hand on Sarah's hair. Kindness is pure when it expects nothing. Christopher watched the emotional scene with quiet respect, his eyes soft. Abigail continued, When the 3 trucks of rice came, I recognized the bags. They came from the same supplier I once worked with, the same network that filled my warehouse long ago. I thought it was coincidence at first, but now I know it is something else. She touched Sarah's cheek. It is restoration. Sarah looked up slowly, tears streaming. Mama, you were once where I am now? Yes, Abigail said, and more, but I lost it all. She looked toward the new restaurant with pride. Maybe it was not meant for me to rise again, but for me to see someone worthy rise. Sarah's tears fell harder. You are the daughter I never had, Abigail whispered, and God has used you to remind me that goodness never dies. Christopher stepped forward slowly. Mama Abigail, may I ask something? She nodded. Your story is powerful, he said. Would you allow us to share it? To let people know that every beggar has a past, and a name, and a story? Abigail smiled sadly. If it will teach the world to be kinder, then yes. Sarah hugged her tightly. But Mama, she said, wiping Abigail's tears, you are not going back to the roadside again. From today, you belong here. With me. Abigail's lips trembled. Sarah, this place is your home, Sarah said firmly. You will eat here, rest here, and stay safe. You will not walk these streets alone again. The old woman broke down completely, her frail arms wrapping around Sarah. Thank you. My daughter. They held each other, 2 souls bound not by blood, but by compassion. Later in the afternoon, Christopher addressed the small crowd that had gathered outside to watch the emotional moment. Today, he announced, we witnessed something greater than business. We witnessed kindness returning home. He turned to Sarah. You fed 1 woman daily, and today 3 trucks came to your door. But that is not the end, he smiled. It is the beginning. He handed Sarah an envelope. Inside was a document confirming that Sarah's kitchen had been officially registered as a business, with full legal backing and a 3-year mentorship program. Sarah gasped. Sir, I don't deserve this. You do, Christopher responded gently. Every plate of food you served was a seed. Now the harvest has come. Abigail stood beside Sarah proudly, holding her hand. And I, the old woman said softly, will stand with you as long as God gives me breath. Sarah squeezed her hand. This time, Mama, you are not losing anything. We rise together. As the sun dipped behind the buildings of Port Harcourt, casting a golden glow on the restaurant signs, Sarah looked at the bags of rice, the new tables, her helpers, and the old woman beside her. She realized something profound. Kindness had not only changed Abigail's life, it had changed hers too. And from that day forward, Sarah's kitchen became more than a restaurant. It became a symbol, a refuge, a reminder that even the smallest acts of kindness can can return in the biggest ways.